And then after this, we have a fellowship downstairs. We got going to be cooking some hot dogs and hamburgers and that kind of thing. And I'm sure all of you brought a lot of food as well. And so we'll be eating. And then we got some games down there too, some outdoor games. And I don't, if you don't want to go outside, you don't have to, but there's some stuff to do out there. And then I was gonna have perhaps a service outside, but I don't know. The weather the last few days has been super windy and kind of hot. And also we got this smoke blowing everywhere. And I just thought maybe we won't go outside. So what we'll do, we're gonna actually come in, we'll have our service in the fellowship hall. So it's still a little bit more relaxed. And that way, if you've been out there playing pickleball and you're, sweating and you just, you can come in and, just have the service downstairs. Yes, there's pickleball. Some of you perked up right there. And we've got that. If I can figure out how to put the net together after the service, we'll figure that out. But I didn't want the wind to blow it away before. But anyway, I'm excited about the day. It'll be a good day. And thank you for being here. And then just as an announcement to our Sunday school class here, there's going to be some changes coming up. And don't be scared. Does that scare anybody? There'll be some changes. All good changes. Yeah, really, really scary. But of course, we got associate pastor coming in here in a couple of weeks, and with an implementation of an associate pastor, there'll be some definite changes, and so there's going to be some changes in Sunday school and some different areas of ministry. All good things that I'm so excited about because it's going to be taking some steps forward, really, in how we can minister and help people, and so that'll be a blessing. One of the changes, though, will be in our Sunday school class here for the adults. And so I made sure it was okay with Brother Rob this morning, but I've asked Brother Rob if he would teach this class for the adults upstairs. And I'm going to go and teach I don't know what to call the class yet, but I'm basically saying it like this. If you're child raising age or younger, almost adults. We got to have the adult class and the almost adult class. Yeah. But I have a heart. I want to be able to minister to our child raising families, to deal with, husband and wife issues, to deal with parenting issues. And then those younger that are kind of growing up, that maybe they're out of high school, but not yet married. Just an opportunity to minister to that group as well. And, it's hard when you have everyone from, basically 1 year out of high school to senior saint age in one class. It's really hard to make sure everyone's, getting something that really hits them and applies to them. And so we're going to be doing that. And as the Lord grows our church, I'm sure there'll be more Sunday school classes made. And really one of the key places where discipleship happens in a church is through Sunday school. And so I'm very excited about it. And I know Brother Rob's excited about it. We've been talking about it for a few weeks, and I'm excited for him to teach as well. So that's coming in a couple of weeks. We'll let you know about that transition when it takes place. But anyway, looking forward to all of that. So many other things that I don't want to take the time to look at this morning, but we're just excited about what God's doing here at Central. It's been a wild year. It's almost been 2 years since I've been here, and it has been nonstop, but in the right direction. And the Lord's added, and he's definitely moving. He's working, and I'm thankful for that. And so just excited about what he's doing. I can't wait to see it 10 years from now. I can't wait to see it 10 years from now, because if the same amount of growth and even certain spiritual growth and things happen in 10 years, I don't think that any of us will recognize it, and I mean that in a good way. It's not that we're going to change. We'll never. As long as I'm here, I've already decided I'm dying with the King James Bible and the doctrine that I'm preaching out of it. And so as long as I'm here, we're not changing any of that. But the Lord will. He wants to change us. He wants to grow us. He wants to make us a church that is the pillar and the ground of the truth. And so as long as we're moving forward, we're going to see some changes, and that's a good thing. Okay, let's go Luke 15. We're going to look at this parable. I've been looking at some parables the last 3 or 4 weeks here, and I'm going to look at one more parable here this morning, and it's a familiar one. It's the parable of the prodigal son. And I know that everyone here probably already knows the parable of the prodigal son, You've probably heard this parable preached. I've heard it preached many times. I've preached through it a few times. I've even heard it preached in conferences and in camps where maybe a guy preached 5 nights, and he preached on this parable for 5 nights and brought all these different truths and applications from it. And all that stuff is good. There's so much here. So I'm just saying this to say I don't know that as far as that actual parable goes that I'm going to be bringing up anything that you haven't heard before. But there is, the reason that we're going to look at this parable is because while it is such a commonly taught and even understood parable, you know, if I just say, if I'm just talking to someone and I say the prodigal son, they know exactly who I'm talking about, right? You're talking about the son that wanted his inheritance early. Remember? And he said, you know, and then he went and he wasted his substance with riotous living, like any young kid who got their inheritance early would do. You know, he went and he did that. And he ends up starving, and all of a sudden circumstances change. There's a famine in the land. And all of a sudden he doesn't have what he needs, and he's starving, so he connects with a citizen of the country, and that person puts him to work feeding the pigs. And this is a Jewish boy. Pigs are unclean to them, and here he is, and he's looking at the pig's food and thinking, I'm so hungry that pig slop is looking pretty good. I don't know if you've ever seen pig slop before, but you got to be pretty hungry to reach that level. Anyway, that's where he was. And so then he comes back, and the Bible says, and we'll read it and we'll look at it, but he comes to himself. Basically, he starts to think, okay, well, what's happening here? Oh, that's right. I am in the wrong. I need to go back home. That's what's happening. And so he goes home, and of course, his father meets him in the way, brings him in. They kill the fatted calf. Everyone lives happily ever after. Or do they? And that's what I was going to look at today. So let's look at Luke chapter 15 and verse 11. And he said, a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat. And no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say unto them, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. Now his elder son was in the field. And as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said unto him, thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. And he said, answering, said to his father, lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this thy son was come, which hath devoured thy living with harlots, thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that I should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. Lord, I'm asking for your help this morning. Lord, I just pray that you would give me clarity, that you'd give me a focus, Lord, here that you'd be pleased with. Lord, help us to learn from this chapter, the truth that's here, Lord, and I pray that you'd help us to rightly divide and understand your word today. May it make a difference in our hearts and our lives, Lord, and may we see the point of the story here that you've told, but also just another principle for Bible study, Lord, that we might learn here today. I pray that you'd help us, and I'll thank you for it. We ask for your help in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, as we look at this parable, most of the time when you hear this, and by the way, I'm not saying anything negative about anyone who preaches this. I've preached through the parable myself, and there's so much there that you can really bring out. This is one of those parables that has many parts to it, lots of different applications. There's a lot of things to bring out in the parable. Most of the time when we look at the parable, we look at it by itself. We start with the verse that we started with, verse number 11. We look at it by itself, and then we just read the story, and we try to understand some things about what's going on. But I've reiterated the last 3 or 4 weeks now how we're to understand a parable. And does anyone remember what we should look for if we're going to understand the parable, the meaning? Does anyone remember? Look for the prompt. That's right. So parables are sometimes difficult to understand. The meanings, we could come up with some really wild meanings to some of the parables. And by the way, many people do come up with some really wild meanings for some of the parables and teach. The problem is then the doctrine they teach based upon those meanings gets skewed or is different than what the Scripture teaches because they haven't kept the parable in its context. So the context of the parable is the prompt. What prompts the parable? And what you will find when you study the parables is there's usually, most of the time, there's a verbal prompt. All right, sometimes it's not verbal. We looked at one last week where it was actually Jesus just perceiving something that was going on in the hearts of men. And so then because of what he perceived, then he spoke a parable. But even that parable, the Bible tells us what he perceived. That's the prompt, right? Why is he teaching this? So if we want to know the truth of this parable, we need to go back and we need to find the prompt. Another thing that I've tried to emphasize is that while there are many applications, and this is one where there are truly many applications to this, and there's a lot of different, as a preacher, I look at something like this and I'm like, man, there's a lot of messages you could preach out of these few verses here. There's lots of, but what I'm saying there is there's lots of applications. But there's really one meaning, there's one truth that Jesus is trying to push across through this parable, and the meaning is the answer to the question or the answer to the prompt. So when we study a parable, there's really these two. They're not rules, but just like guidelines to help us to understand. One, we need to find the prompt. And then two, we need to understand that there's a singular meaning that is a response to the prompt or an answer to the question. And I've said it, that if you're walking in on a conversation, and let's just say, because this happens sometimes in my house, that one of my kids will ask me just a wild question. As a parent, there's an age that kids get into where we tell our kids now, like at some point in the day, we're like, you've hit your quota of questions for the day. You're not allowed any more questions today. That you've already hit 3,972. I can't answer any more questions. And anyway, like one time I was driving with Jax. He was real little. He's probably 5 or 6, and he was asking me question after question after question. And I was just trying to be really patient, answer the questions. And finally, Jax just goes, "Dad, do you know everything?" and I said, "No, son, I don't. But I probably do know more than you. Probably, maybe." Anyway, but no, they get to a point where they ask all these questions. Well, if you walked in my house one day and I was explaining something to my child, but you didn't know the question that they asked, you may be confused about what I'm saying because sometimes the questions are kind of strange. And you're going to walk in and go, what is he telling his kids? What's going on? Well, if you were to rewind and see the context, right? See the question that was asked, well, then everything would make sense. So when we look at a parable, it's an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. The word parable means to cast alongside. So the Lord's telling a truth, and he's telling a story, and he's casting alongside a truth. There's going to be something that prompted it, and for us to truly understand that parable, we don't just need to look at the parable, but we need to go look and see what the question was. All right? So I've spent pretty good time just emphasizing that every week before we get into it. So where's the prompt of this parable? Well, notice this. In verse 11, it says, "And he said." a certain man had two sons. Now, when you're just living normal life and you're having a conversation, there's two people talking to one another, or maybe there's one person just talking, those words, and he said, are those are not spoken aloud in the conversation, right? Those are words that are for the reader, that God put those words in the Bible so the reader would know this is who's speaking these words, right? So those are words that if you are standing there watching the conversation take place, there's not someone going, and he said, okay, you go now. And he said, and you go now. You see what I'm saying? But when you're reading something, you're reading a book, you're reading the passage of Scripture, these words are here to let us know that the Lord is speaking. So just for a second, understand this. The Lord is just continuing to speak in verse number 11 from what he already said in verse number 10. Those words, and he said, are for us to know he's just continuing his speech. But as he's sitting there teaching them, in verse 10, likewise I say unto you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner that repenteth. A certain man had two sons. You see, that's how it would have gone for them. It would have just been a continuation. Jesus is he's teaching a passage. So the first thing I want you to understand is chapter number 15 of Luke is all one teaching. So the parables that come before the prodigal son are very much related, and they all stem from the very same prompting question. So let's go back. Now I'm going to go back and show you this. We're going to go back to the first verse 15. And I'm going to show you that what Luke 15 is it's parables of lost things. All right? Parables of lost things. Luke 15 verse 1. Then drew near unto him all the publicans and sinners for to hear him. So the publicans and sinners, we know what the sinners are, right? The publicans they were considered sinners. They were looked down upon. They're tax collectors who really pillaged and stole to make their living. They were very much seen as sort of the worst of society. So here come some publicans, what you would say the worst of the worst, and some sinners, which if someone looks at you and says, well, there's a sinner, you understanding that there's some reason they're saying that. So we have all these people who, and right or wrong, I'm just telling you, this is how they're looked at. They're looked at as, here's some people who, in some folks' eyes, are unworthy to come before Christ. And they're the ones drawn in, the publicans and sinners. And they're listening to hear him. Look, they come, verse 15, they drew near to hear him. They desired to hear Christ. I'll just put a little side note in. It might be because they knew they needed him. Let's move on, but we'll get to that. And the Pharisees and the scribes. So here's another group of people, Pharisees and scribes. Now, Pharisees are the religious, air quotes, elite, the religious elite of the day. They're very righteous in their own eyes. They were going about to do the works of the law, and they were very sinful. Jesus said that on the outside, they had it all polished, but on the inside, it was dead men's bones, right? He said their mouth is an open sepulcher. He talked about how unrighteous they truly were, but they made it look really good, and they were you might say, religious leaders of the day, the Pharisees, and then the scribes were the doctors of the law. They were the ones that were writing down the law. So you have these two groups of people, and one is looked down upon because they're publicans and sinners, and the other one is very much looked up to because they're the Pharisees and the scribes. And the Pharisees and the scribes thought very much of themselves too. And they didn't come to hear Jesus. Notice they came to murmur. Verse 2. The Pharisees and the scribes murmured, saying, this man receiveth sinners and eateth with them. There's your prompt. There's the prompt. Here's the prompt. A bunch of sinners come to Jesus. They know they need him. They feel like he's got something that they don't have. That he's teaching some truth that may help their lives, and so they're coming in to hear him. And overlooking this situation are some Pharisees and scribes, and they're looking because maybe some of those sinners were people that used to follow them. I don't know. But they're looking, and they look around, and they say, now Jesus, he must not be much of a prophet because he's got sinners coming, and he's eating with them. He's talking to them. So then there's your prompt. Now, then the Lord starts to speak parables, and he speaks 3 of them. Notice they're all about lost things. Verse 3. And he spake this parable unto them, saying, What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he lose one of them, doth not leave the 99 in the wilderness, and go after that which is lost, until he find it? And when he hath found it, he layeth it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he cometh home, he calleth together his friends and neighbors, saying unto them, Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost. Now just think about this story. He's talking to people that may be shepherds or no shepherds. And just imagine if you had 100 sheep and you got out there and you started counting those sheep, you would be concerned that you were losing your livestock. Right? This is your way to make a living. You care for these sheep. They're how you put food on the table at home and clothe your children and everything like that. And so if you look out there and you go to counting and your 100 sheep all of a sudden is 99, you're going to go look for the lost sheep. You're not going to stay with the 99 who are safe and secure, right? You're not going to go there. No, you're going to go and you're going to look for that sheep who is lost. If you didn't, it would say this, that you don't care about the flock, right? You don't. What kind of a rancher would you be if someone calls you? Because if you're a rancher, I know this happens at 3 a.m. They call you and say, what? The cows are out, right? The cows are out. Your fence is down. What rancher in this, there's not one in this state that's going to hang up the phone and go back to sleep. There's not one. Why? Because his cows are out. He's got to go find them. He's got to go get them rounded up because he cares for his herd, and he's going to go and he's going to seek and he's going to find. So this is just a very simple story that Jesus is telling, and he's making this comparison, whether they understand it or not. He's making this comparison that just as you care for these sheep who are lost, I care for man who is lost. And I will go and seek and find him. I will go searching for him and looking. I will go and I'll teach and I'll preach and eat with the publicans and the sinners. And so then he puts this out there. He says, I say unto you that likewise. So, okay, Jesus, what are you talking about? Likewise, joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repenteth, more than over 99 just persons which need no repentance. So the Lord says that, there's joy in heaven. And we looked at this a couple Wednesday nights ago. I was getting ready to preach my message, and Brother Wayne distracted me with a verse. Remember? And so then I had to go and look at this verse that tells us that, whenever a sinner gets saved, it's the Father who rejoices. And he invites along the angels to rejoice with him, just like in all 3 of these parables, when they found that lost thing, they rejoice, but then they invite others to rejoice with them. And so we have the parable of the lost sheep. And he says, whenever that sheep is found, there's rejoicing, just like I rejoice when one sinner repents. Did you know if just one sinner repents, whatever effort you've put into that work of the ministry is absolutely worth it? When just one sinner repents. In verse number 8, the Lord continues. Notice there's no break in his speech. He's this which need no repentance. Either what woman. So he's just continuing his speech. Either what woman having 10 pieces of silver, if she lose one, doth not light a candle and sweep the house and seek diligently till she find it. And when she hath found it, she calleth her friends and her neighbors together, saying, Rejoice with me, for I have found the piece which I had lost. If you lose your wallet, Jax is in the youth class. He lost his wallet. He loses it about twice a year. And the problem is I never have cash, and I always had to borrow it from him because he ends up with my cash because of allowance and such. And he gets birthday money and all that, so I'm always borrowing cash from him. And now who am I supposed to borrow from? Because he's lost his wallet. But just the other day, he's out there in the car. It's like it's dark outside already, and he's out there. And what is he doing out there in the car with the flashlight? Guess what he was doing? He was sweeping the house diligently, right? He's looking for the wallet that he lost. None of you, if you lost your wallet today, maybe I should say this. If you lose your phone, oh boy. Oh, we won't see you till you find it. And if you don't find it, we may never see you again. I mean, how could we ever live without these stupid things? You know, if you lost your phone, it'd probably do you good. That's just another sermon for another day, but No, he's like saying, well, what woman having lost a piece of her silver would not look for it? It's valuable to her. She needs that thing. And so she's going to sweep the house, light a candle, look around. She's going to diligently work. That means that she's going to put effort into finding it. And when she finds it, she calls her friends and her neighbors together saying, rejoice, I have found the piece which I had lost. Likewise. Okay, likewise, just like that, Jesus says, there is joy notice, in the presence of the angels of God. God rejoices, and the angels are experiencing God's rejoicing when one sinner repenteth. A certain man had 2 sons. You see, he's just continuing the thought. And it's the thought of, okay, something is lost and now it is found. And he's continuing the thought, and he goes into the third parable, which is the parable of the lost son. Certain man had 2 sons. And so we know the story here. The younger would get a lesser inheritance. The younger would also have to wait a little bit longer to receive his inheritance. But he's getting stir crazy and he wants to get out from under. And there's all kinds. Here's where we can get a little bit. We can kind of add to the text, and maybe it's not even a good thing, but we can add some things in here like, okay, well, maybe he wasn't satisfied with how life was at home, right? And so when we're preaching, we might say something like that. Well, I'm not sure if that's true or not. I don't know if he was satisfied with how things were at home or not. What I do know is he wanted the inheritance. He wanted what was coming to him, and it was rightfully coming. He wanted that, and he wanted it sooner than he should have gotten it. And so he tells his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. I'm out. Now, maybe we could assume that because of the way his life went, under the father's house, he wasn't able to live riotously, right? He wasn't able to waste substance on harlots under dad's rules. So we could assume possibly that he's getting outside of the house because, I'm tired of these rules. I want to go and live my own way. There's some assumption that can be made. But again, those are just assumptions. I really don't know that. But what I do know is he wanted the inheritance and he asked for it. And his dad said, okay, if you want your inheritance, I'll give it to you. And he divided unto him his living. And as a young man, not able to make good decisions yet, apparently, he goes out and takes a journey into a far country. He gets very far away from home. And so the spiritual picture here, again, is like that lost sheep, right? It's a sheep that's wandered away from the fold. It's not the 100 anymore. It's the 99. And the sheep's gone so far so where the shepherd looks out, he can't see it. And he's counted them all up, and he's rounded them all up, and he's looking, okay, that one's got the notch in the ear. That one's mine. That one's mine. That one's mine. Okay, where is that one? We're missing a sheep here. Where did he go? And can you imagine? I thought about this. Back then, they didn't have fences. And they weren't herding their sheep on their own land many times. They're just herding the sheep. When I was in Israel, there are still groups of Jews who actually herd sheep out in the wilderness. You'll just be driving and you'll look over here and there's a little kind of like a little village set up with really, really temporary tents. And then there's a herd of sheep out there in the field, and they just travel and they live wherever the sheep are. They still do that today. Some groups. And that's how they would do. They would just go. So can you imagine? I mean, here's your flock of sheep. There's 99. Should be 100. And you look around and you go, I don't even know which direction they went. I mean, they're far from home. I could go that way and look. I could go that way and look. I could go all kinds of ways and look. They're lost. That's the picture here. This man that's gone far from home. He's like the lost sheep. He's like the coin that the woman misplaced. He's lost. He's far from home. And he makes bad decisions while he's away from home. We get away from the Father, we begin to make bad decisions. Good preaching point. We get out from under the rules of the Scripture and how the Holy Spirit guides us. And we get out there on our own, we get far away. We're going to waste our substance with riotous living. We're going to start to make decisions in the flesh, and we're going to go the wrong way. There's no doubt about that. And that's what he does. He wastes his substance with riotous living. There's a biblical truth that comes up next, is that the way of this transgressor is hard. I mean, when we get away from God and we're going to live our own way and we're going to waste our substance and instead of living righteously, we're living riotously, the result of that is not what we thought it would be. right? We thought it would be fun. We thought it would be fulfilling. We thought it would be satisfying. We thought it would be enjoyable. We thought a bunch of things. We thought it would fulfill us or that it would make us happy. But what it ends up doing is putting us right smack dab in the middle of the pig pen with nothing. That's what this man learned. There's been I don't know how many billion are on the earth now, like about 8 billion people. So there's been a few billion teenagers that just decided mom and dad's way wasn't good. And all this preaching that I'm hearing all the time, the youth pastor telling me all this stuff isn't good, and I'm just going to go do my own thing. And for all billion of them, it doesn't end well. There hadn't been one yet that got out from under what God wanted them to do and go their own way, and it work out well. It doesn't work out well because God's way is the way that works out well. And so he just landed himself right there where all these other people that have done the very same thing, he's in the hog pen, and he's so hungry he's going to eat not just eat. I mean, I'd be looking at the bacon, but he's looking at the food the bacon's eating. Now, as a Jew, I mean, he probably shouldn't be looking at the bacon either, but yeah, we call this rock bottom, right? And I've dealt with some people, and I've told them, they've said this to me, well, I've just hit rock bottom. And I said, no, you haven't. And they said, well, what do you mean? I'm telling you, I've hit rock bottom. I said, no, you haven't, because you hadn't changed. You're gonna find the basement of rock bottom before you change. That's how hard-headed you are right now, you know. And I know people, I could name them to you, that they've had to get into the basement of rock bottom before they finally realized, and like this man did, he came to himself, right? He finally started to think through the decision. You know what it means to change your mind? It's this word, repent. Repent, to change your mind. He came to himself. He says, I was obviously mistaken. This life isn't what I thought it was going to be. I wasn't able to sustain like I thought I would. I'm not successful like I thought this would be. This isn't fun or fulfilling like I thought it would be. All the fun's over, and now I'm in the hog pen. And he came to himself and said, you know what? Dad knew better all along. I'm going to return home, even if I got to be one of his servants. His servants have food enough and to spare. So he starts heading home. As he comes home, verse number 20, and again, he's just thinking, Dad's not going to accept me, but at least maybe he'll make me a servant. I'm not worthy. He says, I'm not worthy to be called his son, but maybe he'll make me a servant. But we find this great truth that when he was, verse 20, a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. I just picture, and I don't know, I know the father in the story is probably very busy. But I just picture at certain times of the day, the father going out on that front porch and looking. Is he coming back today? Do you think he'll be back tonight? Day after day, looking. Is he coming back? Searching. Just like a man who's looking for a sheep, he doesn't know where the sheep went. Just like a woman who dropped a coin somewhere and she can't find it, diligently seeking. When this man comes back, the father is not only looking for him, but then runs to him. There's a great truth about God right here. You know, no matter how far away you get from God, he's just one step back. He's just one step back. No matter how far you get, I mean, you can go, I mean, you can, and I don't recommend this. Just saying, you can go your own way. You can get all off into sin. You can get so far away from God. But I mean, there's this thing called repentance and forgiveness. And if you come to a place where you say, listen, I'm wrong in this and God is right, and you make that turn back to him, he runs to meet you and he forgives you. Isn't that wonderful? You know how long it would take us to get back to God? If we had to work our way back. I mean, seriously, work our way back over all the holes and disasters we made along the way. If we had to work our way back, I'll give you this example, and some of you know this maybe better than others, but it's much easier to get into debt than to get out of debt. Is that not true? I mean, goodness, I can go get into debt this afternoon, and I can pretty much ruin my financial life in just a matter of a few minutes. But it'll take years for me to crawl my way back out of that hole that I made. But But with God, it's not like that. No, when I say, Lord, I'm wrong and I'm sorry and I'm not worthy, but I need to come back to you, he runs to me. He forgives. He restores. It's a wonderful truth. So this young man comes back. And, the father's overjoyed. Just like that shepherd who found that lost sheep. He's super happy. Now I got all my sheep. You can sleep better when you got all your sheep in the pen. The woman that had all the coins, she's got, I've got all my coins here. She's joyful. She's happy. Now, this man, he's like, now I got all my sons right here under my roof. What a blessing. And he's happy. So he tells his servant, hey, get that robe, the best one, and get a ring and put it on his hand and put shoes on his feet. Let's clean my boy up here. He's the world's chewed him up and spit him out, but he's come back, and so he cleans him up and he puts on him the best robe and shoes on his feet and a ring, and he says, slay the fatted calf. That means we're having steak tonight, right? We're gonna celebrate this. We're gonna have a party. And the party was so extravagant and so alive that the elder son, who has no idea what's going on, he's out in the field. And he hears the music and all the things going on. And he calls to one of the servants and says, hey, what's going on at the house? I didn't know it was anybody's birthday today. I didn't know, I didn't realize, I didn't get an invite or something. What's going on? And they say, oh, your brother, he's back. He came back, and your dad was so happy to have him back that he slayed the fatted calf, and he's excited about it. Come celebrate with us. But we don't see that happening, do we? No, he wasn't happy that his brother was back. Now just for a second. The spiritual picture is someone who is either unsaved, okay, because we could sit here and argue, was he saved or not? They're both sons, so maybe he's saved and he's just backslidden and come back. At the same time, it says very clearly he was lost and now he's found. So is he saved? Is he not? The application works for both. There's no sense in arguing. He was away from the Father. If he was lost, if it's a picture of a lost person, coming to Christ, getting over the sin of the world and coming to Christ, then hallelujah. If it's a picture of a saved person leaving home and getting all messed up and then coming back and being welcomed back in through forgiveness, then hallelujah. Either way, the application is the same. Would we not rejoice with some sinner who just got saved? Would we not rejoice when we heard that life has been given to someone who is spiritually dead and on their way to hell? Would we not rejoice? Would we not rejoice if one of us, one of our brothers or sisters in Christ got way away from the Lord and totally messed up their life, but then all of a sudden one day they show back up and God's restored them and helped them? Would we not rejoice? I would hope that we would, but this brother, he was angry. He doesn't deserve the fatted calf. He's a sinner. He wasted he wasted your substance with riots. He just gave all your money away. I've held all of it. If anyone deserves the fatted calf, it's me. I want to ask a question. At the end of the story, because I said this earlier, if I told you about the prodigal son, and we're at Home Depot, and I bump into someone I don't know, which often happens, and then if they ask me even 2 questions, I can guarantee you I can get them in, I can start talking church to them. And if I were to mention to some stranger the prodigal son, I said this, they'd know exactly who I was talking about. But they wouldn't. Who is the prodigal son of the story? Have you ever thought about it? Because there's 2 sons. At the end of the story, when we read it, I know he did go prodigal, but at the end of the story, when we read it, one son is right with the Lord and the other is not. And so the one that's far away from the Lord and has been far away from the Lord, the whole story is the second son, the one who thought in his own mind he was righteous and his brother a sinner. So how do you get all that? Go back to the prompt. There were two groups of people. There were the righteous standing there, and they were righteous in their own eyes. And then there was the sinner. And the sinner was coming to Christ. No, the publicans don't deserve to be taught by the Messiah. He must not be the Messiah, because why would he teach these publicans and sinners? You see, there were two sons standing there that day when Jesus started to teach. You see in this? And one of them came to Christ because they were a sinner and they knew it. The other was standing there righteous in their own eyes. And I don't need to come to Christ. I don't need to repent of anything in my life. And if anyone deserves to be, kind of hanging out with the Messiah, it ought not to be them, it ought to be me. So let me ask, who's prodigal? Go back to the prompt. Who walked away that day knowing Christ, and who walked away not knowing Him? There's just a story of two sons. Here's the question today for us. Oh, before I get that, oh man, it's already 10 till. Okay. You'll never find what you're looking for if you're looking in the wrong place. Okay? These guys are looking for righteousness, justification, salvation, spirituality, new spiritual life. That's what they're looking for. But they were looking for it in the wrong place. They were looking for it in their works. They were looking for it in their own self-righteousness, in their law. They were even looking for it in their societal tiers, that they had reached some level among their peers. They were looking for that righteousness in all the wrong places instead of Jesus. But the sinners, they came to Christ because they were looking for righteousness not in themselves, but in the Savior. No, verse 2, they came to hear Him. They came to listen. You'll never find anything if you look in the wrong place. In 1497, King Henry VII, he sent many explorers to the New World, trying to find a passage to the Indies far north of where Columbus had landed. He launched quite a few missions, sending John Cabot, Jacques Cartier, Sir Francis Bacon, Captain Cook, you heard of him, James Cook, and Henry Hudson. He's trying to find this so-called Northwest Passage. And he sent many to do that. Some never returned home, some died. Some went through mighty peril and then came home, but the fact was they never found the passage because it doesn't exist. They were looking in the wrong place for something that was not there. So it doesn't matter how sincere we are about our seeking if we're seeking in the wrong place. The issue here and what Jesus does with these three parables, and I've tried to emphasize this the last couple weeks. There's a prompt. It's a murmuring. Jesus, by preaching these parables, is pointing His finger right at those Pharisees. And He's saying, you're looking for righteousness in the wrong place. And you're never going to find it. But these who have come, sinners as though they are looking for it in the right place. And what is lost has been found. And there will be rejoicing when a sinner comes to repentance. And so again, understanding the parable means we have to find that prompt. It answers the question. So really, it's the story of the prodigal sons. And one of them gets right, the other one doesn't. Let's pray. Lord, thank You for Your word and the truth that's in it, Lord. I know there's more here, kind of short on time, but I trust, Lord, that You were able to get across the message You laid on my heart. I pray it was clear. Lord, I pray You bless our day. We're excited about everything going on here. And we just pray You be with us in the morning service and the fellowship time to follow. And even this afternoon as we meet downstairs, Lord, be with that as well. And we just pray You give us a great day serving You today, a great day of fellowship. Lord, would You be honored, glorified. Lord, get all the glory here. Would you please be first place in our hearts today, and may that be apparent through our worship. And we thank you for it all. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.